Thank you, Frank. Okay, thank you, everybody. It's great to be here. This is what I'm going to tell you. This is my story today. Essentially, how we at Ericsson deployed Acrolinx in somewhat unconventional ways in order to reach our software developers. I work as a product information owner at the Packet Core development unit at Ericsson's office in Gothenburg. It's a really big company, like 111,000 employees spread across 180 countries around the world. There are 24,000 R&D employees, meaning that we have a lot of software developers to consider. And in our world, we have very distributed content development teams. There are a few centralized functions. I'm not sure we can call it a center of excellence, but there are some central functions dealing with methods, tools, style, and so on. But overall, our teams are very distributed across the globe. And the content we are creating is technical product information. It's descriptions, installation instructions, operating instructions, and so on, aiming for professionals at telecom operators. In this huge global company with customers, activities in 180 countries, how many languages do you think we need to translate to? Any takers here? 50? 50 is a good guess. Another guess was 0, and that's actually the right answer here. So there are some exceptions. There are some local exceptions handled locally by the distributed units. But basically no language, no translation at all is a sort of an envious position. And it helps us focus on other things as well. So me and my content team can focus on other stuff. And the team setup, it varies a whole lot in the company. So we're partnering with suppliers to provide technical writer resources. This is also what we do in the Packet Core unit. We have dedicated technical writers, about 40 of them, working to create the content embedded in development teams, taking care of all the functionality that is being deployed and developed. We have a global style manual for all of Ericsson that is widely used and sometimes also widely used, mostly widely. We are also involved in a research project with one university in Sweden where we have developed a quite extensive quality model aiming to integrate quality metrics from different types of automated solutions, like Acrolinx, XML analysis, analytics, and so on. So this is content quality for us. And a while back, we reinforced our content quality by the introduction of the Acrolinx tool. It was a helpful addition. This helped us enforce our style rules. It helped us replace a few different word lists that we were using for terminology. And it helped us replace the default spell checker as well. It had problems recognizing our company name. So every time somebody wrote Ericsson, it suggested that the writer replaced it. So things are better now. After a while, when introducing Acrolinx, considering a content quality process and so on, this is what we came to realize. That most of the content was created by technical writers. They were using XML editors with great tool support, and they had an invested interest in getting the high content quality due to being professional writers, due to being consultants, so they had to do a good job. And these writers are creating all the descriptions and instructions that are published into our documentation portal for our end users. So this is all good. However, we also realized at that time that a lot of our content was created elsewhere, or more specifically, somewhere deep down in the software, by a software developer working with a quite different tool set. And this is not any content, it's important content. There were things like command reference descriptions, entries in log files needed for troubleshooting the products. It was even output on the product's command line, like things being shown front and center to the users. And this was bad news, of course. So the content that was most prominent to the actual users got the least attention. And the users who needed the most support didn't get any of us. We needed something else. We needed a way to give software developers the same level of support as we provide to the technical writers, at least the same level of support. We needed the ability to check our content regardless of the source where it's being developed, because there's a myriad of different tools used to create the content. We needed it to be simple and straightforward. There shouldn't be any learning curve. It should be quick and easy to use, of course. And we needed this to be integrated in the software developers' environment and in their workflow. Not a new thing for them to do because they are busy developing software, right? What got us going was a little utility called Acrolinx CLC, which we got access to when we first purchased Acrolinx. So this was basically a Java tool for sending files to an Acrolinx server and getting an XML report in return. And what we ended up building based on this little tool was a command line utility for fast feedback on text without having to leave the current environment. We built an integration with the data models in our software, where the commands and alarms and so on are being designed. We also built an integration into our feedback system so that a software developer responsible for updating a text about an alarm could also hear the feedback from the user who has been reading about this alarm. And we did all this as part of our content development team effort, where we have one person assigned to do scripting and programming and automation tasks. And this is how it works. So we call this little tool CPIQ for Customer Product Information Quality. So a developer about to develop some content that will be shown to end users in some way is typing up this text without leaving the shell they are in and sending this to the Acrolinx server. And if they want to, they can connect the query to a specific object in the software itself, like an alarm or a counter or an event. And then the tool will fetch all the relevant text from wherever the sources are located in the software and gather them together and pass them on to Acrolinx. Acrolinx will respond with a list of issues, warnings. And if there is any user feedback on that specific object, that will also be shown to the user. The developer will, of course, investigate these issues and these comments to see what they are about, if they're worth doing anything about, and ask a senior colleague if they feel insecure. And then later, when having made the decision, correct the content, commit it into the repository. And also at that time, we notify the users what we have done about their feedback. So all this. So it's kind of an extensive system, but we needed to make this really straightforward and simple. So I'm actually going to show you what it looks like. So it may not look like much, but remember that this is for software developers, not for you guys. So here's a typical Unix, Linux terminal window used by a developer. And you would have an example here where a writer has written a text that is about to be committed, something that will be shown to users in the product command line, for example. And the developer would type up this just in the shell like this and maybe copy it from somewhere else and get immediate feedback saying like, okay, we've checked this text. There's no quality issues in this case. You can go on and commit. So here's another example with a little bit more complex string. Maybe the developer typing up this makes an error or two. And the CPIQ will send this to Acrolinx and give back a summary presented directly on the prompt here, starting out with a a sort of a summary saying that there are one spelling issue and two style issues that you may want to look into. Modify, and then there's a reference to style guides here saying that you can simplify this and don't use possessives. And there's also a link to more information. If you right-click that XML link, you would get a typical Acrolinx report where you can learn more about these style rules, why they are important, and what's good or bad examples. So in this example, the developer will type a reference to a command that has just been implemented. Instead of giving the text, they give the command name. And this will connect to the software model wherever this command is defined and all the content that is related to the command, and give the same all clear back saying that, okay, this is fine, you can commit this new command. And in this case, you can also see that there is no unresolved feedback for this specific object, so they know that as well. And in this other example, here's a modified command, which will be showing some warnings. So in the content that is fetched here, you can see that there's one grammar issue and there's one style issue as well. In this case, the developer may not be sure if this replacing to is relevant or not. Then just as any other Linux command, you can have a verbose option. So you say, okay, I want to see more about what's behind here. So in this example, you can see having the tool print out the short text that was fetched and checked here at the top. So in this final example, is an example of a user, a developer, maybe making a modification to a command that has been in production before. This has been something that's been available to users, and there's some feedback on it then. So there are no quality issues from Acrolinx, but there's one unresolved feedback saying that there's something about the action set defined for this command that is off. And somebody earlier in May looked at that. So the developer may want to go back and see, do we really have the right action set defined for this particular command? And after making that investigation, they would use the same command with a sign-off option saying that, okay, this specific comment, this 65239, should be signed off, and we are providing 4 standard answers that they can choose from. So this is one case where we don't want the developers to write their own stuff, because this will also be presented directly to the user submitting the original feedback. Hopefully it will result in the documentation being updated and corrected all the time. So when deploying this, we introduce this as a step in various workflows for the software developers. And of course, we presented it for all the cross-functional teams. And the developers had lots of ideas for further integration of this tool. The idea of a command line tool with a standard Unix on the command line really appealed to them. It can be integrated into anything. They can pipe it into grep, or they can pipe it into more or whatever. We are hoping to continue to deploy this to all developers, all 24,000 of them. We're also considering the possibility of gating the deliveries, saying that you can't really deliver unless you have checked your content. So I want to encourage you to not forget this content created by software developers. Andrew already told us that there is some new support coming from Acrolinx, but it doesn't have to be difficult. Like content quality checks can be really basic. They can be integrated basically anywhere. And I also want to encourage all you guys to explore all these options to make sure you get a full return on the investment you make into style rules and terminology, because it doesn't come for free, and then we have to make sure we get our money's worth. And as a side note, with this final picture of Ericsson in Gothenburg, I can mention that we're hiring software developers right now if you want. Okay, thank you.